My friend, there is a mystery hidden in plain sight, woven into the fabric of your life, a sign, a whisper of eternity that is echoed from your childhood, long before you had the eyes to see or the ears to hear, a sign that reveals your purpose, your calling, your divine assignment on this earth, long before you ever spoke a word, before you had thoughts to form sentences or dreams to chase, a purpose was written over your life. Not by the will of man, not by the shaping of circumstance, but by the hand of the eternal. The scriptures say, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I set you apart. This was not just spoken to a prophet of old. It is a truth that echoes into every life crafted by the Creator. Your life is not random. You are not a product of accident or coincidence. You were formed with intent, designed with precision, and placed into this world with a purpose that predates your first breath. From the very beginning, the author of all things has embedded within you a calling, an assignment that has left its traces since childhood, a sign that you were meant for something more. Think back to your earliest memories. There were moments, small, almost unnoticeable, that stirred something deep within you. Perhaps it was a passion, a desire to protect, to teach, to create, to stand for justice, to bring comfort. Or maybe it was a persistent curiosity, a fascination with truth, a restlessness with the world as it was. These were not passing interests or childish whims. They were signposts, whispers from heaven pointing you toward your purpose. In the ancient world, God often called his servants from the earliest stages of their lives. Samuel heard the voice of God as a boy in the temple. Joseph received dreams as a youth, dreams that would one day guide nations. David was anointed while still a shepherd boy. These were not just stories. They are patterns, divine blueprints. They reveal a consistent truth. God places the seed of destiny early, even before the world can recognize it. But the signs are not always clear. They don't come with flashing lights or heavenly trumpets. Often they come quietly in moments of wonder, in unexpected burdens, in questions no one else seemed to ask. You may have wondered why certain things moved you deeply while others passed by unaffected. Why injustice made you weep. Why truth mattered to you more than comfort. Why you felt out of place in a world chasing shallow things. These were not flaws. They were signals. The enemy too sees the sign. And just as Pharaoh sought to destroy Moses in infancy and Herod tried to kill the Messiah as a child, so too has the enemy tried to target the called before their calling can fully awaken. Maybe he came through rejection. Maybe through abuse, confusion, trauma, fear. Maybe he tried to drown the sign in shame or to silence it through distraction. But even that, yes, even the brokenness can become part of the purpose. For what is surrendered to God can be redeemed by him. The sign of your calling is often hidden in the very things that once made you feel different or alone. But the difference was not to isolate you. It was to distinguish you. It was heaven's way of setting you apart. The very struggles you faced, the pain you endured, the things that others could not see, all of it is now revealed to be part of the design. So now, look again at your life. Revisit the moments that marked you as a child, not with the eyes of a wounded past, but with the vision of purpose. What made your heart burn even when you didn't understand why? What did you love before the world told you what to want? What felt sacred when no one else noticed? The sign has always been there, and it is not too late to follow it. You may have wandered, you may have grown weary, but the calling has not changed. The same voice that called you before birth still calls now. You were chosen, you were set apart, and everything, yes, everything you've been through has been preparing you to walk in the purpose that was written over you from the beginning. Now is the time to awaken, the time to remember, the time to live the calling you were born to fulfill. From the earliest days of your life, there were signs, clues scattered like divine fingerprints that pointed toward a future far greater than you could have imagined. These signs were not accidents. They were not simply personality traits or random interests. They were prophetic echoes, spiritual impressions placed upon your soul by the one who formed you. Your childhood was not just a season of innocence. It was a blueprint, a canvas upon which your purpose was quietly revealed. In the ancient scriptures, we see this mystery unfold again and again. Joseph was a teenager when he dreamed of sheaves bowing before him, a symbol of authority and divine appointment. David, still a boy, found his soul stirred in the fields of Bethlehem while tending sheep, preparing him for the day he would lead a kingdom. Samuel was just a child when he heard the voice of the Almighty in the stillness of the night. Their youth was not a time of waiting, it was a time of preparation, and their early lives held the signs of their future purpose. So too in your life, the evidence of your calling was present in childhood. Perhaps you felt a deep sensitivity, a longing for truth, or a burden for things that others dismissed. Maybe you were stirred by things that seemed beyond your years, a concern for justice, a compassion for the broken, or a longing to protect the vulnerable. These weren't merely childhood impressions. They were divine indicators, heavenly signals whispering, this is who you are. This is what you're made for. But here lies the paradox: the more significant the calling, the earlier the opposition. The enemy does not wait for you to mature into your purpose. He strikes early. He strikes at the root. He attacks the soil before the seed can grow. If your childhood was marked by confusion, fear, pain, or rejection, do not discount it. Often the attack is the evidence of the calling. Pharaoh tried to kill Moses in infancy. Herod sought to destroy Yeshua as a child. Why? Because both were threats to the kingdom of darkness even before they knew the fullness of who they were. What if the adversity you faced as a child was not the end, but the confirmation? What if the wounds you carry are not evidence of your failure, but of your assignment? The enemy tries to distort the sign, to bury it under trauma, insecurity, or shame. But what the enemy meant for harm, the God of heaven will redeem for glory. The wound becomes the window through which purpose shines. It may have taken you years to understand the weight of your life, but the sign was always there. It's in your story, in your tears, in your passions, and in your burdens. It's the H you've carried in your heart for something more, the sense that you were made for something specific, something holy. You are not random. Your path is not accidental. The same God who formed the stars formed you with intention. He crafted you with precision. And the signs he placed in your childhood were not the end. They were the beginning. They were the first steps on a journey toward your divine purpose. Now the mystery is revealed. What was hidden is being uncovered. It is time to return to the signs, to rediscover the early whispers of your identity, to awaken the purpose that has waited quietly beneath the surface. You are not who the world said you were. You are who God declared you to be before the foundations of the earth. The child you once were was closer to the calling than you knew. The sign is still there, and now in the fullness of time is rising again. Follow it. Embrace it. Step into the purpose that has followed you since the beginning, for this is your appointed time. There is a truth many fail to see, a mystery buried deep within the story of every life that the adversary does not attack without reason. He strikes with purpose. And the earlier the strike, the greater the threat you pose to his kingdom. If you faced darkness in your youth, if you were wounded early, misunderstood, rejected, or broken before you even had the words to explain your pain, it was not because you were weak, it was because you were marked by heaven. The enemy doesn't waste his energy. He does not throw his arrows at empty vessels. He targets what he fears, and what he fears most is a life aligned with the will of God. A life that carries the power to change others, to break chains, to speak truth in a world drowning in deception. So if your life has been marked by opposition from your earliest days, know this, it is evidence of the calling you carry. In the scriptures, we see this principle unfold with precision. When Moses was born, Pharaoh issued a decree to kill every Hebrew male child. Why? Because Moses was destined to lead God's people out of bondage. The enemy saw a threat in a baby lying in a basket. When Yeshua was born, Herod ordered the massacre of the innocents. Why? Because even as a child, the Messiah's presence shook the foundations of hell. This is the pattern of spiritual war. The calling draws the conflict. The anointing invites the assault. So reflect on your own life. What hit you hardest when you were young? What wound has never quite healed? What lie were you told early enough that it shaped your sense of worth? These were not random. They were strategic. The enemy saw the sign, the early evidence of your destiny, and moved to destroy it before it could grow. But here is the glory of God. What the enemy meant for harm, God uses for purpose. The very area where you were attacked is often the exact area where your ministry will flourish. The wound becomes a weapon in the hands of redemption. The scar becomes the seal of your authority to speak healing to others. If you were silenced as a child, your voice was always meant to carry power. If you were shamed, your identity was always meant to be a banner of truth. If you were rejected, your heart was always crafted to carry the compassion of Christ. The assault is often a distorted reflection of the anointing. Satan corrupts what he cannot kill, and God redeems what he refuses to waste. So do not despise your early battles. They are not signs of abandonment. They are signs of your importance. Do not dismiss the pain. It is sacred soil, and from it will rise a strength you never knew was in you. You see, the enemy knew something about you even before you did. But now it is time for you to know it. Time to understand that the resistance you faced was not because you were forgotten, but because you were chosen. The early fire was not to destroy you, but to refine you for the task ahead. There is no attack without a cause, and there is no calling without resistance. So rise now in that revelation. What once made you question your worth now confirms your value. What once made you feel small now testifies that you were always dangerous to the darkness. The enemy tried to end your story before it began, but here you are, still standing, still breathing, still marked by the call of God. And that is the greatest sign of all. There is a mystery hidden in what you once saw as your flaw, the things that made you different, the qualities that set you apart, the very attributes that caused you to feel out of place. These were never mistakes, they were marks. Marks of a heavenly design. While the world sought to mold you into its image, heaven had already stamped you with its own. As a child, perhaps you were told you were too much, too sensitive, too intense, too curious, too quiet, too passionate. But what if those very traits were evidence of your divine assignment? What if what the world rejected, heaven celebrated? In the scriptures, the ones chosen by God were rarely those who fit the mold. Joseph was a dreamer set apart from his brothers. David was the youngest, the overlooked shepherd, yet God saw a king. Jeremiah cried out that he was too young, but God said, "Do not say, I am only a youth, for you will go to everyone I send you." Even Yeshua, the Messiah, was despised and rejected by men, misunderstood by his own. Why? Because those marked by heaven rarely look like what the world expects. Your uniqueness was never a liability, it was a prophecy. That burning in your spirit, the conviction that wouldn't leave you alone, the burden that weighed on your heart even when you were a child, those were the fingerprints of God. The enemy tried to convince you it was a curse. He made you feel ashamed of what was actually sacred. He knew if you ever embraced the way you were formed, you would become unstoppable. If you ever stepped into your true identity, hell would tremble. So he tried to shame the very things God designed for glory. But now the veil must be lifted. You were never too much. You were exactly as you needed to be for your purpose. That sensitivity, it makes you able to discern what others miss. That fire, it fuels the passion to fight for what is right. That quiet strength, it's the foundation of unshakable truth. What made you different was what made you dangerous to the darkness. The world wants conformity. Heaven seeks consecration, and you were set apart not to blend in, but to stand out, not for pride, but for purpose. So stop apologizing for who you are. Stop hiding what God created. What others didn't understand was never meant to be understood by them. It was meant to be lived out by you. You were not designed for the approval of man. You were designed for the assignment of heaven. And that uniqueness, the very thing that once made you feel like you didn't belong, is the sign. It is the evidence that you carry something different, something holy, something set apart for this time, for this generation, for this calling. Embrace it. Walk in it. Live it. For the things that made you feel out of place in the world are the very things that align you perfectly with the kingdom. There is a holy paradox in your story, one that hides in the wounds, the trials, the questions you've carried since youth. What if the very things that hurt you the most were not there to destroy you, but to prepare you? What if your greatest pain has always been the gateway to your divine purpose? In the hands of man, pain breaks. In the hands of God, pain builds. There is a pattern in the word. Again and again, Those who carried the greatest calling walked through fire before they ever reached their throne. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, enslaved and imprisoned, yet it was through that very suffering that he came to rule Egypt and save nations. Moses was driven from Egypt into the wilderness. David was hunted and exiled before he ever wore the crown. Even the Messiah, before resurrection came crucifixion. Why? Because pain prepares, suffering refines, and trials uncover the purpose that lies buried beneath the surface. Look back on your life. Remember the moments that broke you, the seasons where you felt abandoned, overlooked, misunderstood, the things you never told anyone, the burdens you carried in silence. What if those were not signs that God had left you, but signs that he was shaping you? In your childhood, you may have endured rejection, confusion, or trauma. You may have asked, why me? But now hear the whisper of heaven, because you were being formed. The pain was not the end of your story. It was the soil from which your calling would rise. You see, the enemy fears not just your joy, but your purpose. He attacked your heart so that you would never use it. He wounded your voice so you would never speak. He scarred your past so you'd never believe your future. But here's the mystery: when you surrender your pain to God, he doesn't erase it, he redeems it. He turns it into purpose. What you thought disqualified you is the very thing that qualifies you. That heartbreak. Now you carry empathy, that silence. Now you hold wisdom, that battle. Now you walk in authority. You've been through what others haven't, so you can reach those others can't. The place of your greatest sorrow becomes the platform of your greatest ministry. Because people are not healed by your perfection, they are healed by your scars. This is the upside down way of the kingdom. The stone that was rejected becomes the cornerstone. The shepherd becomes a king. The crucified becomes the risen Lord. And the one who was broken becomes the vessel that pours out healing. So stop running from your past. Stop hiding your pain. That valley you walked through is now your testimony. That night you thought would never end is now your message. What you thought was your ruin was actually your refining. The fire did not destroy you, it forged you. Now you carry something real, not theory, not empty words, but a purpose that has been tested, proven, and sealed in the fires of experience. And that makes you dangerous to the darkness. So do not waste your pain. Do not bury what God intends to use. Give it to him. Let him breathe upon it. Let him show you what it was always meant to be. Your calling is not separate from your story. It is revealed through it. And now, what once brought tears will bring life to others. That is the power of purpose. That is the mystery of pain redeemed. This is the moment where everything changes, not because the signs weren't there before, but because now you see them for what they truly are. What you once dismissed as strange memories, as passing thoughts or childhood impulses, now rise like divine signals pointing you to the truth. Your life has always had direction. There has always been a calling, and now is the time to answer it. For years, the signs waited. They lingered in the background, whispers of purpose, nudges from the spirit, unshakable longings. You may have wandered, you may have doubted. The world may have tried to pull you into its current, away from the river of destiny prepared for you since the foundations of the earth. But destiny doesn't die, it only sleeps. And now, heaven is awakening what has been dormant. The time of silence is over. The time of confusion is breaking. The fog of past wounds and present fears is lifting. And the voice of the Lord calls again, not with a new message, but with a call that has echoed since childhood. You were made for this? This is not a time to wait for permission. You've already been chosen. It's not a time to question whether you're worthy. The blood has made you clean. It's not about your qualifications. It's about your surrender. God is not calling the perfect. He's calling the available. Those who will say yes. Those who will lay down their fear and rise in obedience. And if you are still breathing, you are still called. If your heart still burns, even faintly, the flame can be fanned again. If your soul still aches for something more, that ache is your invitation. Now is the time to remember what you once knew before life tried to make you forget. Remember the moments you felt closest to God. Remember the burdens that stirred you before the world distracted you. Remember the sense that your life was meant for more than survival, that it was meant for significance. Not for fame, not for comfort, but for kingdom impact. The sign was never meant to be a mystery forever. It was meant to be a revelation in its time. And this is your time. Stand up now. Not in your own strength, but in the strength of the one who called you. Walk forward, not with all the answers, but with a willing heart. The same God who called Moses through the burning bush, who whispered to Samuel in the temple, who overshadowed Mary with divine purpose, that same God is now calling you. You don't need the world's affirmation. You don't need to compare your journey. You just need to obey. The signs are no longer in the past. They're burning in the present. Step into the calling that has been yours since the beginning. Let go of delay, lay down doubt, and rise. Because the time is no longer coming, the time is now.